Hi there, everyone. I'm Brian Crawl, and I am here to teach you something very special today. This is how to get really fucking high, just like an old pro such as myself. For this, you are going to need a bottle, at least one bottle, or ideally more than one, of some of your favorite liquor, whatever that may be, some instant coffee, a weed grinder, some teaspoons and, fractions of a teaspoon, a poker, a lighter, a cigar cutter, a water pipe, a good cigar, meaning not the type you would use to roll blunts. If you want to roll yourself a blunt instead of using a water pipe, you're going to need to get a special cigar for that and a special cigar to smoke like this one. As much flowers of cannabis as you can afford, because you're not just going to want to smoke them, you're going to want to also make it into some can of butter or oil. I used coconut oil, same recipe as can of butter. You basically just throw the weed and the butter into a pot of water and you let it cook for a few hours. And then you put it on ice, chill it, and the butter will come right off of the water. So after that, all you need is some water, a shot glass, and then another clean glass. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to take about half a teaspoon or so, maybe a teaspoon of the can of butter, depending on how high you want to get. I want to get really high, so I'm just going to take this whole chunk right here. It's probably about a teaspoon, maybe a little bit more. And you got to start with this because this takes up to 2 hours to kick in fully. All right, you're not going to really feel high off of this for at least an hour. It's not going to be kicked in entirely, not for sure, at least for 2 full hours. So start with this and don't take more until 2 whole hours have passed. All right. You could, of course, make cookies with it, but why not just eat it? I'd rather just eat it. But now the problem with that is that I don't want to be high in an hour or two. I want to be high now. So the next thing you want to do is take some marijuana flowers and put them into a cannabis herb grinder. Grind them up. And then once you've ground it up, take a half a teaspoon or maybe a quarter teaspoon and then spoon it into your bowl, which should have water in it for filtration. And make sure you use a good torch lighter so the flame doesn't even have to hit the marijuana. And then you start smoking it from the edge of the bowl, lighting as little as possible. And you want to basically make it so that the flame will burn downward into the bowl and then across it. All right, so don't just burn across the whole entire top, because after a few puffs, it's going to be very hard to smoke the rest of the bowl. So do it from the edge. Light a little, suck it down, and let it burn downward first before you start to prompt it moving across. And then basically just take as big of hits as you can, because getting the wind knocked out of you like that really helps make you feel higher. It's not actually helping the weed to absorb that much more, like some people say, but the breathing that you are doing causes a head rush. So that's cool. But either way, you want to make sure you try to smoke the whole bowl as fast as you can if you want to get really high. And not only that, while you're working on that, then you can get to work on some of these other things. Alright, so I'm going to make a coffee and whiskey cocktail here. So all I'm going to do here is take a shot of some whiskey. Oops. Came out really fast. Actually, I'm already getting a little buzzed. Take a shot of whiskey, whatever kind you prefer. Alright. And then a teaspoon of some instant coffee. I use the low acid kind, you know, so that way I can do more shots without it getting, you know, too upset in my stomach. And then you just add a little bit of water. Not too much because you want to be able to down this all at once, which is what I'm going to do now. And cheers. Oh yeah, it's good. Make sure you have water though. Drink glasses of water in between shots. That way you can keep going without making yourself dehydrated and sick. Alright? So then the last thing, now that you've gotten some caffeine and alcohol in your system, is you want to get some nicotine in your system. So you want to have a good cigar and a cigar cutter, which will indicate if you have a good cigar or not, if you need to cut it. Alright, if you don't need to cut it, it's not a good enough cigar to smoke. It might be good enough to use to roll a blunt, but not to smoke. The ones you smoke, you cut with a cigar cutter. Alright, and then you're going to want to put your lighter on the highest setting and toast the end to get it blackened without the flame touching it. Alright, get it blackened like a marshmallow before you start to puff on it and light it. And then as you light it, you're going to rotate it and do 4 puffs. And that's a perfectly lit cigar. You don't inhale these. You just take the smoke into your mouth. And this has enough nicotine in it that it's going to give you a better nicotine buzz than any sort of cigarettes or anything else, like a nicotine vape or anything like that. Just go with the cigar if you want to get really high. All right, so start puffing on that, and then you want to circle back. Repeat the entire process except for with the edibles. Okay, so we're going to puff on the weed some more. Yeah, that's good shit. I went with something cheap because I was going to be making edibles with it, but I wanted one that was going to smell and taste good enough to smoke as well, so I went with the Gelinade, which I got a whole ounce of for just $100. So can't go wrong with that. And make sure you keep puffing on your cigar like at least once every 30 seconds to a minute. Otherwise, it'll go out. Alright, and if it does go out, you have to repeat the process of toasting it and then lighting it while rotating it. Because if you char the end too much by lighting it improperly, it's going to taste like shit. Alright? And you also don't want to be puffing away at it too much more than, once every 30 seconds because you don't want to get it really hot. Okay? So now I'm going to go for another whiskey here. I did Canadian whiskey last time, so this time I'm going to do some American whiskey. Some bourbon. Alright, let's do a shot of bourbon. And I can feel the last shot that I took and the caffeine starting to come on. Because besides the edibles, the rest of the stuff does have a very quick onset, alright? It's just the edibles that you have to be patient for, okay? So let's do another cup of coffee here in the whiskey. Some water in there. Swirl it around. Cheers. Gotta love American whiskey. Oh yeah. The American whiskey, the bourbon, has much more flavor than the Canadian whiskey, but that also means it's going to be harder to pound multiple shots straight in a row. So if you're looking to pound multiple shots straight in a row, you want to go with something that has less flavor, like a Canadian whiskey, or even better, a vodka. Alright? But now that we've done another drink, I'm going to take another hit of weed. Basically, try to finish off this bowl. I want to wait for these 2 shots to hit me before I do any more shots, because I don't want to be hit by 3 or 4 shots all at once. And I'm going to start to pace myself now, because once you get to where you want to be with your level of highness, you want to kind of ride that plateau, or maybe go just above it, but you don't want to go too hard too fast, because then you'll just end up getting sick. So I basically have all I need to get really high and keep going and staying at the level I want to be at for the rest of the day here, which is exactly what I'm going to do. And I hope that you will have some drinks and some smoke with me. Jesus Christ. That stuff's toxic. Don't do that. Oh yeah. It's coming on now. So, that is how you get really fucked up, like an old pro such as myself. This is all you really need. You don't need any of these designer drugs or new experimental drugs or anything. You're never going to get more high or a better high than with these ingredients. Maybe if you need something more than that, if you need something a little more cognitive, a little more intellectual, or a little more imaginative or emotional or psychological in whatever way, you could throw in a psychedelic, a good old-fashioned one, like some mushrooms, for instance, like do a microdose of mushrooms, something that I do a regimen of during some days of the week. But aside from that, this is really all the drugs you need. Good old-fashioned natural substances, not like the stuff they got people shooting up on the streets getting more addicted to than heroin. Alright? You really don't even need any of that shit, because that's not going to get you as high or a better high than these basic plants that Mother Earth, the nature that we live in, has given us. Alright? And when people start tinkering too much with chemistry and unnatural chemicals, what you end up with is a high that may be intense in its own way, but it's not going to last as long. It's not going to be as satisfying. The calm down is going to be harder. The body load is going to be harder. The withdrawal is going to be harder. All right? It's going to be more addictive. It's going to fuck up your brain and body more. All right? If you stick with things like just these microdoses of these basic substances that man has always loved and enjoyed, things like alcohol, cannabis, coffee, and tobacco, maybe a little bit of mushrooms, and maybe a little bit of kratom thrown in there if you want. I mean, I used to like kratom, but I ended up getting bored with it, and it is basically an opiate, has some withdrawal that comes with it, and I found that I really didn't need it. You know, I found that just sticking with the basics was best, and maybe some mushrooms here and there. All right, but this is all you really need, and there's reasons why these are the most popular drugs. Okay, I'm starting to catch a really good buzz right now, and I'm gonna keep at it. And when the edibles hit, you know, between that and everything else, there's a synergy between all these different microdoses going on here. All right, and the reason why I do edibles plus smoking a bowl is because these are actually two different forms of weed. They have two different forms of THC in them. Okay, the edibles may have originally been the same THC, but once you cook it and then ingest it and it gets processed by the liver, it turns into a different and more psychedelic molecule. All right, and it's going to have a different arc that goes along with it. All right, it's going to start out with there being nothing for the first hour or two. All right, then you're going to go up like this, and it's going to be a longer, steadier arc, whereas smoking a bowl hits you right away. So it comes up like this and then goes down. So they have opposite arcs and different experiences that are complementary. It's good to use them both, but in small doses. All right, and then top that off with a couple of shots of good old-fashioned clean liquor like vodka and whiskey, you know, that doesn't have any additives in it, and some good old-fashioned clean coffee. Again, no additives, not any of this shit from Starbucks. All right, ideally the low acid kind. Take these single doses or, you know, double doses of each of these together. It's all you really need to get good and high. All right, and so if you stick to that, you're going to have a much more satisfying, long-lasting high with virtually no withdrawal. All right, depending on how you're doing it, and it's going to be less hard on your body, especially over time, you know, depending on how you're doing it, than if you were to be using drugs that come in chemical form, especially these newer kinds, you know, like your experimental designer drugs and all this shit people are shooting up. You know, notice that nothing here is a chemical that gets shot up into the veins. You don't need that, all right? If you are smoking something, it will hit you within 2 fucking minutes. The only thing that shooting does is makes a high much more compressed so that it hits you within 30 seconds and then you're coming down soon, okay? But when you smoke, it hits you within 2 minutes and then it lasts. It still lasts for hours, all right? So, look, you don't need to bother with anything that is a harsh chemical or, you know, an unnatural synthetic compound. This is all you need, all right? It's a much more pleasant experience. Get yourself a good water pipe and some good tasting weed. You could tell how it's going to taste by the way that it smells. You don't need to know all the names of the weed. You just need to smell them You know, ask the guy to smell it. Buy whatever you can afford that smells the best. And get yourself some clean liquor and some clean coffee. Make yourself some edibles. And get yourself a cigar, too. Don't underestimate the power of real tobacco. Alright? You need real tobacco. None of this broken down, reconstituted tobacco with added metals and chemicals and shit. Get real tobacco. It's got no additives, no extra chemicals, but a lot of nicotine, and it tastes much better than cigarettes. Cigars taste better. It just takes a little bit longer for the tobacco to hit you because you're not inhaling it. You just take it in your mouth, all right? But you're going to like cigars better than cigarettes once you try them and find, you know, one that you actually enjoy, since there's different kinds, you know. But I hope that you will play this video again and do drinks with me, smoke with me, all right, and enjoy. Oh man. All right, thanks for watching, guys. I'm gonna go watch a movie. Whew. I'm starting to get really fucked up now. Man. Yeah, I'm getting wasted. It's all starting to come together now. See, it's got a synergistic effect when you use all these things together. Even in small doses, they combine and they get you really fucking high. Alright, guys, that's it. If you enjoy doing this, if you enjoy doing drugs with me, let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll do another video like this again. See you later, guys. Have fun.